Welcome back to another episode of Hawksy Fishing. Today I'm going to be giving you a bit of a rundown on my kayak setup here, any changes I've made, accessories I've added, that sort of thing, as well as where I store stuff, how I use it out on the water. I find that's just as important as the accessories themselves. Having a really streamlined and effective means of using the kayak on the water. For those of you who haven't watched my content before, don't know the kind of fishing I do, sum it up, predominantly estuaries, rivers, that sort of thing, light lure fishing for the most part, but I am getting into the heavier side of things a little bit now. That's just a little bit of background info for what this is set up for. Obviously, if you're doing something different, this setup may not be that suitable for you. Anyway, make sure you subscribe to the channel and I'll get stuck into things. Before I get into the nitty-gritty of everything about this kayak, I thought I'd run you through what it is and why I chose that particular model. So first things first, it is a Hobie Outback, the 2015 model. So it's running the previous hull. The 2019 and 2020 models are actually a different hull to this one. And it is the first model that came with the Vantage seat just there. Reason I went with this is that I really wanted a stable platform for fishing the estuaries in, and a lot of guys who are thinking those sort of things will end up with a pro angler, but I also do a lot of other fishing, walking it up rivers, dragging it over logs, that sort of thing, and that's where the pro angler really doesn't stand up against the Outback. The extra weight, the extra bulk of a pro angler isn't that suited for that sort of fishing. So I ultimately decided that I'd sacrifice a little bit of stability, a little bit of storage to give me something that was a lot more manageable for that style of fishing that I really love doing. Now that you know what I've got and why I've got it, let's go through the kayak. Starting up the front with the most important accessory of all of them, the rope and hose handle. This guy here is a result of me trying to drag it up a set of stairs with the previous one, wrenching way too hard on it and breaking it, and finding the first thing I could that kind of gets the job done for a handle on the front. I can pretty comfortably say after a few months of using it like this, it's not very good. Definitely if you break it, try and get one of the Hobie handles back on it. They are super comfortable to use. That is not. Coming back, got the front hatch here. I've got the little tub that Hobie sells. Really useful bit of storage. You can see here I've got trebles, a little bit of split ring forceps in there. Really useful fishing hard bodies, particularly for brim. They absolutely savage your trebles. Really useful to have something like that. Waterproof container so I don't rust out all my trebles. Along here, got a bunch of plastics. This is just a random handful that I grabbed, but usually I go through, pick out what I want for where I'm going. Jig heads, all my jig heads are sorted in trays based on what's in there. Got a few trays of them in here at the moment. And then up the front here, different leaders. You got fluoro, mono, different weights, different brands, depending on what I'm doing for what I use. Under this, we've got the battery. Now this is a FPV lithium battery, 17.5 amp hour. Put it up here on the mast mount that Burley Pro do, just because previously I had a lead acid battery up the back, and with the live well on the back I didn't like having so much weight back there, so I've moved it up the front here. The lithium battery is super light anyway, but I figured anything I can do to get some more weight up the front will be handy when I've got a full 40 litre live well on the back. Moving back down from the hatch there, you've got Mirage drive. I've got turbo fins on mine, really useful, help you go a bit quicker out on the water. Mirage well, nothing crazy to say there, just got the clips for keeping the drive in. Next up, another change I've made, square hatch over the round hatch. This model comes standard with the round hatch here. Square hatch lets you get more in there, has a bigger bucket in it, and also has a bigger opening. You can fit things like these trays in there really easily. The Burley Pro side bros here, super useful. These things really changed how I fish off the kayak, made things a lot easier for me. First thing, lets you keep, got a pair of forceps, scissors, and the lip grips on this side here. Just keeping all that stuff really accessible. There's nothing worse than landing a fish and realizing that your forceps are either up the front here or in the hatch underneath the fish. Having them somewhere that's really easy to access is super useful. Second thing is storage for other stuff. I usually put a pack or two of the plastics I think I'm most likely to use during the trip to save me going all the way to the front hatch every time I want to change plastics, as well as some scent in there. I use a fair bit of scent when I'm brim fishing. Also chuck jig heads, used hard bodies, all that sort of thing in these little pockets. They're just incredibly good. Next up, we'll go the accessories mounted on the side next to the side bros. So this side here, I've got a little rod holder. On this, I use it at this angle here for after I've landed the fish, chuck the rod in the holder, gets it out of the way, nice and easy. I also troll on it, but twist it round to be running straight out the side like that, and also I open this up, lower it down so it's flat to the water. I don't do a heap of trolling, but this is a really great spot for that. It's raised up so it doesn't get in the way of my legs as much when I'm pedaling as well. Alright, over on the other side we've got the sounder. I've got a Lawrence Elite TI7, really handy little unit there. Side imaging, down imaging, chirp, they're the main things I use on it. This one's also a GPS unit with maps. I don't use them a whole bunch, but they are incredibly handy. Typically on the water, I'm running the side imaging along a band along the bottom here, chirp up here, down imaging in the other corner. All of them give me slightly different information, so I do like having all three of them there at once. Everything else about that is fairly standard. Only thing is the Burley Pro cover here. Really handy, this visor. Keeps water off the screen, but the big one is glare. Lets you run a lower brightness on your sounder more often, extends battery life, which on a kayak is a big deal. You're stuck with a limited capacity for the battery there, and if you churn through that, having your sounder super bright for multi-day trips, that's far from ideal. The other thing for the sounder here is the little Burley Pro transducer guard. This one's fairly scuffed up from some of the stuff I do on it. Again, it's another thing, I would not buy a sounder without getting one of these. If you're getting one with side scan, super useful. I reckon it saved me a billion transducers now. Moving back down, next up, vantage seat. I'm not going to go over this too much. Basically just a comfy seat for you to sit on while you kayak. I have mine cranked up to the highest setting probably 90% of the time, and use the little area that you get under it for a bit of extra storage. Trays, got cranker crabs here, a bunch of hard bodies there. I find I can fit 3 trays of this size under there pretty comfortably. Be able to work out which one's which and grab them easily in the water when I want to change lures. Little gutters along here, I use them for spare lures when I'm in calm conditions. When there's some fairly heavy chop, this area can kind of get washed through a little bit by the water coming over. Not ideal when that's the case. The side bros up there are where the used lures go. Here, next up, got the cart. I've just got the heavy duty Hobie cart here. Solid wheels, these are foam filled. Never gonna pop them or anything like that. Really great for any hard surfaces. Not the best over sand, still manageable with the Outback. Not really a part of the kayak, but next up is my net. It's a Berkeley catch and release net. I've chopped down the handle there to be quite short. That's actually for land-based fishing. I just really like the big opening on it, particularly brim fishing, bass fishing. You don't need it this big, it just makes it a lot easier landing fish. I've also got a little split ring up on the top. That's great for quick release magnets onto bags. Rod holder extender here, one each side. I just use them when I am going out on trips where I'm not taking out the milk crate for rods. Keeps the reels up out of the water, keeps things a lot drier than they would otherwise be. Milk crate here, nothing too special. It's basically a milk crate, got some rod holders cable tied in here, PVC tube in the corner. Anchor sits in there usually. Don't actually own an anchor, so I just use it for a brag mat at the minute. Rods down there, And then this one here, I've cut a little slot down. That's for fly rods to let the reel pass down through. And then I run a bit of bungee around the top there, around the rod to stop it falling out. It's the best solution I've managed to come up with for getting a fly rod out on the water with me. Up the back, got the rear hatch. I very rarely use this. It's got a Railblazer mount on it. Sometimes I put a light in there. I tend to use it in here just because it's a bit easier to get to on the water, turn on and off. Sailing rudder, bigger rudder, better turning circle, quite handy on the water. Standard Hobie paddle. You've got the anchor trolley here. As I said before, don't actually own an anchor at the minute. When I did have one and was going bait fishing a little bit, that's where this guy comes in handy. So you deploy the anchor at your side and then swivel it down round to the back there for when you anchor, or up at the nose if you want to be facing into the current for whatever reason. And we've got the live well. This is a homemade job out of a 40 litre June Esky. If you want to know how to make these, I'll drop a link below. Nick Mace did a really good rundown of how to make one for in-depth angler. If I can follow his instructions, pretty much anyone can. Basic gist of it is you've got the pipe here, bit of plumbing. This allows water to come up through. This is for recirculation. This is where the water goes into. Then little switch there that Marty from Burley Pro made up for me. Off in the middle, high, so 12 volt up high, up the top. Low, 6 volt down below. Allows me to run it high when I want to fill it or really want things aerated for liveys, get them really jumping around, or low just to keep it circulating, keep fish alive in there. You guys who watch the channel a bit probably haven't seen a lot of the live well. I pretty much only use it in comps. I'm not very big on the idea of putting fish in a live well and leaving them in there all day when you don't need to. So when I social fish, I tend to just release fish. In here, I've got a little spray bar, milk bottle with the top cut off it for filling it above the point so that the pump will actually work. The pump itself, I don't know the technical terms, but basically it needs to be below the waterline to actually work. And then this is just the one-way filter that goes on the bottom. It's pretty pesky and tends to get bumped off when you're transporting it around, so I can store it on the inside and put it on when I launch. On the side of this guy here, I've got a few ram tubes. That's for my rod holders. Obviously this goes where my milk crate is at the minute. Can't use the rod holders on the milk crate, so I had to come up with a way of storing rods on the water during competitions. That finishes up my run through of my Hobie Outback and how I've set it up to fish off. If you've got any other questions, anything else you want to know, drop a comment down below and I'll get back to you. For those of you who don't know, those of us who are unfortunate enough to be stuck in Melbourne at the moment have got 5 weeks in lockdown with no fishing. I'll be doing a few more videos on gear rundowns, all that sort of thing. If there's anything in particular you want to see, let me know in the comments down below and I'll make sure to get that done. Otherwise, I've got a few other ideas of what I'll be doing. Next up is going to be a absolutely epic brim session that I filmed before lockdown fishing off the kayak here. It was an awesome session with Ben from Chasing Fish. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that one, and I'll catch you then.